Hello and welcome to the Bitcoin.Review podcast, where we explore developments and projects with the people who actually make them happen. The show is supported by Pod 2.0, Sat Streaming, and Coinkite. If you're a new listener, I'm NVK. I run Coinkite, where we've been helping people secure their Bitcoins for over a decade. We make the cold card and fun products like the block clock. You can find more information about it on coinkite.com.
Hello, and welcome back to the Bitcoin.Review. Today, windy day. It was a hot week. Now, it's not a nice week. The winter is coming. Today with me, I have Mr. Craig Raw.
Good to be back, as always.
See, I always have to go slow on the raw part because, there is the fear of always saying the wrong Craig. My dyslexic brain can't handle.
He's gone. I mean, nobody talks about him anymore, right?
There's only one Craig.
Exactly.
Mr. Rob Hamilton.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
And Mr. Ben Carman.
Yo, good to be back.
Nice to have you guys. We have a nice full list. And there's been a lot of things. We've been paged to the stories here. Boom. All right, don't start with the housekeeping. I'm just going to bring a couple items here and then I'll deal with the rest later. All right, so we have new callers for the queue. That's fun. People have been asking us for that. We wanted to make sure there were no hiccups to the case. That's why they came after. But they're out. And what else? Guy Swan has read the cold card understanding security document. It was kind of cool, a nice read. If you want to get a sense of the level of insanity we do here, I highly recommend reading that. I guess finally, we've automated all the reseller stuff. That's kind of fun. It's a lot of very, very, very complex code, so people can self-serve, automate all things. We don't want people. Maybe one day, me and Peter die and the company continues going, paying itself servers and shipping it without us even being around. That'd be pretty funny. That's the goal. All right, major vulnerabilities. Bitcoin Core disclosure of memory DDoS due to header spam. I feel like the guys are way more sort of stressed about shit like this than I am. You can crash Core. Do you care? I don't.
It's funny looking at this exploit. So you could spam low difficulty alternative chains. And so I guess there's a window where you could just be mine on your computer or something and get 100,000 blocks and you could just flood someone with it. But to your point, Rodolfo, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's bad to take down a node from a network distribution standpoint, but it seems the money's still there.
Do you even need to run the nodes? Should people even run the nodes? I mean, running a node doesn't mean anything.
It'd be bad if you're doing a lightning node or something where you need always uptime.
Okay.
And if someone took it down for 2 weeks, then you could be fucked. But
that's a good point.
If your node is down for 2 weeks, so you don't notice, that might be kind of your fault. But
yeah, I guess our store node we haven't updated in years, so this bug probably hasn't even shown up on the version that we have.
You don't even run lightning anyway.
Exactly. So what you're saying is, on Grug money, base layer safe, lightning unsafe with this bug?
True. Just use on-chain. It's cheap.
Craig?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a bit annoying if your node goes down and you actually need to transact. That much is true. And also, if this was become a known thing, undoubtedly somebody out there would have abused it. People like to do stuff for fun, so... And then it's just a thing,
Yeah.
It becomes a news item.
All right, NBitcoin library, vulnerability found in multi-sig implementation of nbitcoin.sec-p 256K1. Oof. This is the .NET library. Don't use .NET. I think that's the lesson of all lessons, right? I mean...
I didn't even know there was a .NET Bitcoin library.
Can't they just use the C library?
So this is part of BTC Pay Server, which is a C# project. So that's why everyone likes to have their own language. It's quite interesting. The PR says fix generate nonce wasn't random as expected.
Oh no, I'm looking at Nicholas Durier's pull request. Because an empty session ID was passed instead of a null session ID, the nonce was not randomly generated.
Mm.
So that's like foundational. That's like dark skipping, like, just like, but even worse
in scale.
You don't have to even you just put no entropy. You just do none.
That's pretty brutal.
That's rough, man.
You asked why don't they just use SecP? Everyone asked this about NBitcoin, but Nicholas Dorier refuses and just copy pastes the C code and converts it to C#. And this is what happens when you do that.
Yes.
Like the fix is like changing like empty array to null. It's just like super like, effectively equal things, but and on every context. And yeah, broke.
I mean, I get if you was C++, right? Like I get it, right? Like that starts to become a problem if you want to run that on whatever stack you have. But C is like you can stick it in anything, right? I'm sure. Like I'm not a .NET expert, but I'm sure there is like a way to just run a block of C in .NET.
Yeah.
This commit's 2 days old, so if you're, is this related to the BT? This is in the NBitcoin library that BTC Pay Server uses. Like, is BTC Pay Server impacted by this?
And it said it's for Musig, so I don't know what's using Musig, if anything, yet. So it might be fine.
I wonder if this was just speculating here. They probably, like, we just updated libsec on COLDCARD because there was a reasonable updating in speed on the last version that just came out. And maybe they just updated. So, like, maybe people don't even have this version running.
I've heard that the signing times for a lot of things have gone a lot faster. Like, it was a good uptick for this new SecP library update.
Yeah, I mean, we found 30% savings in time.
Yeah.
Damn.
Cool. All right. The next story, it was supposed to be here, but maybe it got lost in the list. But supply chain attack on Kaboom pagers and Kaboom radios and Kaboom solar panels chargers. So this is an interesting one, right? Because it came out that it was a shell corporation that was selling those pagers in Lebanon. Those guys were using the bad guys, depending on whose side you look from. I'm just going to refer as the bad guys, but whatever.
Well, if you're threat modeling it as the attacker,
exactly,
you're attacking the bad guys, right?
Exactly.
So using neutral language, like as a threat model, independent of politics.
Is this the correct pronoun? And it was very interesting because they use a shell, right, to sell those. So it was funny. We had a bunch of subsequent calls internally about stuff like this. And, like we've revisited this stuff internally many, many times. And what's interesting is they had to go through the lengths that we thought somebody would have to go through, which is it's too hard to break the original manufacturer because even if the original manufacturer has an executive that goes rogue, it's still hard to break things internally, right? You have processes, right? And then like some guy is going to ask internally, like, why do we have a separate box that goes to this client, right? Like, it's like, it just becomes a logistical nightmare to ship a separate altered for a specific customer, right? And so what they did, they set up the shell. This is what I would have done is, like you become a reseller and you buy the thing and you alter the thing and then you resell it. For the people that maybe don't understand outside of like developed world, most people don't buy devices from original manufacturers or from major manufacturer like resellers because those would be legally coming into the country paying the top tax, for example, bracket, right? Which in most countries like 100, 200% tax when you talk about Brazil, Middle East, and things like that. So what happens is you have this sort of like mule type resellers that like they'll fill up a bag right in Florida with stuff from Amazon and then they'll take it to the country where they resell it, and those guys tend to skip taxes, so they're able to sell for a reasonable amount of price locally. Now becomes a high trust sort of like relationship, right? Because those guys have the devices with them for a long time, and if you have devices that are like not bare board or clear case or something, it becomes a problem. You can't inspect. There's a lot of trust involved in that.
They individually, what was it, like 1 to 2 ounces of C4 on every single one of them?
Yeah.
Plus GPS tracking. So they had full GPS tracking plus the C4 to try and do this counterattack. And that was like, they set up their own shell company and like set up their own parallel like supply chain to like execute all of this. It was from the ground up, ultimately. And to my understanding, they were doing it because they built some relationship with Hezbollah and it was like a good price, right? So they found a good deal. You found a good deal. You're looking to save some money, and then it just gets placed in.
the price is always one of the ways that people get pound, right? Like it's like it really is a great like, look guys, we have this for cheaper price. And
I mean, the level of game theory too of like how deep the supply chain goes is impressive too, because they were all using pagers because they assumed, probably rightfully so, that the cell networks were totally compromised.
Yes.
Right. So they thought they were playing they were doing a two-dimensional, like a level 2 move. And then Mossad had a level 3 move of selling them to the level 2 move, the busted pagers. The walkie-talkies afterwards. After the pagers broke, they started using walkie-talkies, and then the walkie-talkies blew up.
Those are ICOM. ICOM is one of the biggest manufacturers of like high quality HTs, as we call them, the hand radios, right? And they had the commercial version of them, not the ham version of them. Those are not clear case. And also, they have very good supply chains because they don't want fakes against their brands, right? But again, reseller, complicated there. And then there were the solar power chargers, right? These are little modules that take in the solar power, and then they also charge batteries, and they become the essentially like a diode that switches power. Those are all made in China and very easy to, you take a container, you change them all, and then you resell it. Like the model for those things. I mean, like in one way or another, like there is trust. It doesn't matter what you buy from somebody, there's going to be trust, right? Like you cannot escape that. It really is a matter of like how much trust and how much is the cost of breaking that trust. Right? Like, the brands are going to be ruined if they were participating in something like that. How much does the brand puts into like making sure that something looks not tampered with, right? So, most things that have any sort of like a security would have like at least like a little sticker that breaks. In our case, we put the security bags, and you have the clear case, and, the software is signed. You have a secure bootloader, and you have reproducible builds, and that's true for a lot of the hardware wallets, right? I think Bitcoiners sort of like rightly went a little nuts, but also like kind of went a little too nuts with this one. The commentary on Twitter was pretty funny, and then there is the other part too. Like, at least in our case, we were thinking about this, and like, remember a few episodes ago we were talking about, Craig, like how we don't want to have the fake Rolex, anti-fake Rolex defenses. Like, for example, we don't want a factory key that verifies the hardware and they arrive at the customer's hand. Because, again, like, because then what would happen is, those guys would come to us and, kidnap us and say, hey, make a version that is evil. Now it's like a valid factory fake version that people don't check because it's not reproducible. Anyways, it's a massive rabbit hole. People just need to watch themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one commentary that's come out of this, back in the Bitcoin world is that multi-vendor, multi-sig is really, the best defense that you have. Because as you rightly say, at some level, there's a degree of trust. So if you can at least extend that trust across to multiple relationships, then the chance of all of those relationships being compromised at the same time is much, much lower. And I think that that's the one thing, which is, something that we've all known for a long period of time, but, being reminded of it again. So, with that in mind, I've been thinking, why is it that, we don't advocate this more? I know it's sort of talked about more about Bitcoiners, but perhaps, hardware wallet manufacturers should be talking about the hardware wallets that they prefer to pair with their own, in terms of making multi-sigs, because ultimately, if we want the best and most secure solution, then that's what it amounts to. And the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot in the last week is all of the hardware wallet manufacturers, all of their clients are not especially well designed for building a multi-vendor, multi-sig kind of solution.
100%.
So almost all of them, if not all of them, are Python, essentially little Python projects, really. There's not really much more than one can say than that. And Python's not a terrible language by any means. It's really good for certain things, but it's definitely not the language you would choose to build a library in, not an interface library in, because you can't dynamically link into it. It's an interpreted language. I'm sure that there's someone out there who's listening to this now, knows saying that you can, but certainly I found that very hard to do. So effectively, most of us have been using the Python libraries to talk to them for a long period of time now. And effectively what that has come down to is everyone's either just using them directly or using them via HWI, which is the library that Ava Chow wrote. And it's just not ideal because you're basically having to call out to this. I'm not sure what you use, Rob, but you have to call out to this external kind of client, which you're doing in the middle of your own app. It's just not ideal. It is just really not ideal. So I've just thought to myself, this isn't good. We shouldn't be living in this world. And I've just decided to rewrite the entire thing, to rewrite every single hardware wallet interface myself in a language that I can actually have some degree of.
What did you choose?
Well, I'm basically using a combination of C and Java just because that's my sort of world.
Yeah. I think so there's a few things there. First of all, I fully agree. Like for me, if anything, like a hardware wallet should not write the client. We don't, and we won't. I don't think hardware wallets should have clients because it's a bad alignment of incentives. Like you now have the, two things that you're trusting from the same manufacturer. And also the incentives are, and you see it in the market, they don't support other hardware wallets because it's the sales problem, right? Like, I really don't like that. I rather advertise all the software wallets that support all the hardware wallets. Like, that's it. Just go use Sparrow, right? Like, we have it right on big on the website. Use something else. So that's one thing. The other thing is, we could write, for example, first of all, COLDCARD doesn't have a wallet, right? So, that doesn't have a client. So, and if we did, we would write it probably in Python. But the CKCC, which is essentially like dev library to talk to COLDCARD, right? It's for devs. And the problem we see is we are C#, right? But every time we pump out C code, people can't use it. Like Python is legible, right? Like it's very easy for other devs to pick up. So that's one reason why it's done that way. And then, the challenge now, like let's say multi-vendor part, right? Our cloners are using Mark III code, right? So like there's no point in us suggesting you use that because it's too close and it's too close to a code base that we have abandoned. So I can't in good conscience suggest people use that. I used to suggest people use Ledger, right? Like I respect the level of security and understanding of all the way to Silicon they have. It is a whole other ball game those guys are playing. But then they added their backdoor as a service, right? It's like, please upload your seed, right? Like, it's brutal. The Trezor guys, it's a cool product and all, but up until now, there was no security, right? Like anybody can take the seed out of the device. And people using it for multi-sig are not using a passphrase in the device, right? So that key is gone. That was part of the reason why we made TapSigner, right? Like it's closed source. It's not like IDEO. It doesn't have a screen, but it sufficed our personal needs. So we did that. There is a Bitbox, guys. It's a very reasonably secure device. I don't recommend for single sig because it is USB only. But, there is some decent security on that. But now you need a computer on USB. It's complicated. We are in our little rabbit hole tinfoil hat of what we think it's security and adequate security. I think each of the manufacturers think the same way for whatever trade-off sort of indexing that they do. I think it's hard to do that recommendation. I think that recommendation should come from clients. It shouldn't be the manufacturers of the devices that should make that recommendation. It's you're Craig, you have opinions, you make a client that talks to them all, and go with that. Same from Nunchuk, same for Enchain or Kaza, they all have their own recommendations. Kaza tells you to use YubiKey now, right? It's everybody indexes for what makes sense to them, and everybody has different opinions on that.
Yeah, I get that.
I was just going to make a joke and say I'm surprised Rodolfo got to the whole thing, but saying that you should just use a tab signer as your second signer.
It's hard, man. It really is hard. It's after the Ledger rug on my suggestion, I feel too gun shy to make any suggestions now.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, for me, I obviously have to be concerned with people who are like, is the Sparrow that I'm running the real Sparrow? Can I, for me, it's just so not part of my world that it's hard for me to actually put myself into that place. So I completely get the point that you make around it's difficult for the hardware wallet vendors to kind of recommend other people's devices because they're so deeply entrenched in their views of what makes a good device. But nevertheless, we do have to kind of move forward. I will say that the Trezor does seem to, I don't know if they're actually selling any of the old non-secure element devices anymore. So, the Safe 3, the Safe 5, they've definitely, learned a few lessons and moved things forward, and they're very usable. I also have my concerns, like most other people, about Ledger's potential backdoor. It's just a thing, I think it's largely in our minds perhaps, but it's still in your mind. So it doesn't really matter at some point, if you're worried about it, you want to sleep better at night. You just don't want to be worried about things like that. Yeah, as you know, I like the simple devices. So the Bitbox is also a nice device from that point of view, really simple device. And, the USB thing is there, but it's, the USB devices are not going anywhere. They reduced in massive amounts and we have relatively few issues. So
yeah, no, I mean, totally. But like, for example, I'll tell you another story, right? So like another one that got rugged on my recommendations, right? I used to recommend, they forgot to use a secure element on Bitbox 1. Shipped the devices into the market and like was not used. And then, it's brutal. It's like, it's absolutely brutal. Like, I can't have these rugs, guys, because we don't keep up, right? Like, we don't pay attention to the competition, like, in terms of, like, the nitty-gritty. Like, I don't watch their repo, right? I have better shit to do. So, like, I don't know the state of things. And it's very easy for a device to go south, right? Like, look at, like, what was the name? Keykeeper, I think was the name of the Trezor clone that, like, then just simply, like, went closed source and never...
KeepKey.
Yeah, KeepKey. And then just, like, had, like, gaping holes in security, but still for sale. Like...
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the few hardware wallets that I don't have, that I don't know if I'm going to be able to support with my rewrite. But anyway, we'll get through that and see what happens. For the most part, I'm just going to be doing the ones that are sold today, because you probably shouldn't be using any hardware wallet that is too old anyway.
Yes. That's something that comes up a lot. People are like, why do I have to buy a new one? Why is there always a new one? Because there should be a new one. Like, security of Bitcoin is such a cutting edge thing. Right? Remember when that bug was found on SegWit itself and affected almost all hardware wallets? I think it was the grifting attack.
Yeah.
Like, like we have to keep on, like, moving forward, right? And also, like, maybe part of the problem is that, like, there is different kinds of HODL. Like, when we talk, like, multi-sig is the best, absolutely. Multi-vendor, multi-sig, probably the best. The issue is that, like, that's not for everybody and for everything, right? Like, I bet most people on this call have a single hardware wallet that they use for spending money. Like, they don't go through their, like, multi-sig super cold setup to like, buy a TV, right? Like,
open a Lightning channel, right?
It's hard, right? Because every time we have this conversation, especially on Twitter, which is hopeless, I'm not there much anymore. I'm mostly on Nostr now. Having the nuance of, like, for which pile we're talking about, I think is a huge deal.
Yeah, no, for sure. But look, I tend to think the people that listen to this show are probably the ones who do actually use multi-sig, because there's only 5 of them anyway. So, those are the 5 multi-sig users out there.
They're on a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, there you go.
All the listeners of the show. Yeah, I know it's... like, Rurden had a very good article, and like, honestly, like, out of all the concerns I have about Bitcoin custody and the chances of, like, and you put, like, on a risk scale of like how you could lose your coin, like, supply chain attacks, like, very up, like, there in the sort of, like, last thing category. But again, if you're talking about your, like, fucking 100 years HODL, right, that stuff you don't plan on using or selling or anything, you have to think about that. The last category, right? You have to think about the lasers. You have to think about the space lasers. You have to think about all this shit. Look at YubiKey, right? I mean, it's been sitting, like, they've been sitting on this attack for some time. And, it's only 11 grand really in gear. and some knowledge, it doesn't seem to be an attack that has a lot of high risk of damaging the sample, which is a huge problem. Because normally these very complex attacks, right, they damage the sample too easy. So it's very low chance they get through it. Probably reason why the boys from Donjon still have not presented us with a Mark IV seed. Otherwise, I'm sure they would have. And Trezor has the same secure element as the YubiKey, the new Trezors, right? It's the same one. So, now the Donjon guys are taking a closer look at that. And it's tricky, right? Because that kind of attack, if it's done right, you might be able to cost reduce to like, a few $100 and or even less, right? You take it to the guy on the shitty building and he takes the stuff out. Passphrase, if you're using single sig, definitely on any brand.
Well, you can use passphrase on multi-sig as well. It's not as crazy as it might sound. It's absolutely can be done.
People can barely manage 3 fucking seed plates. Like, can you imagine having one for the passphrase of one of the seed plates? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but this is not your normal Bitcoin user.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest. We are well in the weeds at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, we're deep in the weeds for sure.
Just don't use a general purpose computer.
And also just because we were talking about all these different ones, ideally, I think this is a very critical feature if you're talking about a multi-sig with the cold card, is being able to verify the address and the derivation of all the change addresses. You actually can do that. The one that I know that does that with a very clean user interface actually is the Keystone Wallet. It has a Bitcoin-only firmware. And I think, I know it's now the standard. Several years ago, that was not a thing people were doing. But if you're I think one of the most important elements if you're doing a multi-sig and distributing funds is you want to be able to, without having to go to your internet connected Sparrow wallet, look at and be like, okay, are these the actual change addresses or am I being spoofed right now? Right? Because last thing you want to do is have 10 Bitcoin and you send one out and then the 9 and change goes, oops, somewhere else. Not my problem anymore. Right? So these things are always an infinite rabbit hole. I just wanted to call that out, Craig, because like other things to recommend. I think the ledger, because it would only be a single key, it's not ideal because of the ledger recover stuff. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's, I have a lot of problems with basically being able to offer that functionality in the firmware. That said, if it's part of a quorum, you are mitigated in that sense. But yeah, that's
true.
Yeah, I mean, the rabbit hole is big. Like, it's deep. Like, there's one thing that I've been waiting for people to support. Maybe the next one the support ends up getting in my recommendations is we have this way for you to set up a quorum offline without Sparrow. So you can set the script on a cold card using another 2 cold cards, right? And you set it all up just doing an SD between them. You could also do, I think, via barbecue QR now. And that's super cool, right? Because you don't need a computer. You can prove to yourself that the thing did what it did. You can get a collection of addresses. So you don't even need to share the XPub with a computer. You just take a list of addresses and that's it, right? Like, it's not ideal. It's kind of scary to do that. Share the XPub. But if you really, really wanted to, you could. And there's a lot of value that comes with all this tinfoil hat thinking and sort of like I could if I wanted to. It de-risks against the vendor because for every little feature like that, the vendor essentially takes another piece of clothes off, right? Like, it just shows more naked in terms of it gets found out. Right. Anyway, so I'd love if maybe Leixing from Keystone, maybe he'll be the next one to implement. I haven't talked to him, but maybe he's listening.
He has a new device. So he mailed me a new device to do testing on. I have not opened it. It's nothing personal. I'm just super busy and it doesn't support manuscript, so I haven't actually touched it yet. But I know he has a new Keystone 3 out. I haven't looked at it. I'm assuming it probably maybe has more functionality.
I think this space is going to change. It's going to change a lot later. It's not going to change at all in the near future. I was just tweeting about this. Hardware wallets are the best thing since sliced bread. The level of security we have right now is insane. It really is insane. It's insane.
I've noticed this very weird trend recently where people try to down talk or trivialize what a hardware wallet is, right? It's a piece of plastic or, and diminishing if you keep it in your desk drawer. And it's you also can keep a loaded gun in your desk drawer. That may not be the best place to keep it if you have kids running around, right? You can't blame the incompetent user on the location and functionality of the tools. Hardware wallets fundamentally bring this asymmetric power that enables you as a person to keep a secret from the world, right? And we've gotten so far with the user experience and the functionality of all of this stuff. You always want to be kind of cautious of diminishing the value that, public-private key cryptography, which makes all of Bitcoin work. You want to make sure that's respected just in the system of how Bitcoin works as the ethos, because if you don't have that, then you don't have security, you don't have individuals, it's all paper Bitcoin, right?
I mean, before hardware wallets, like the only people that had access to like closed security, it was military. Like that's it. Nobody else but military and some extremely large corporation that probably has military contracts, was able to keep a secret this safe for this amount of money. Like this is unheard of. And at storage, at rest, and runtime, right? Like it's pretty insane. So like, it's like people chill. Like we are inventing the future, but like, be grateful a little bit for like this insane setups that we have with, all the tinfoil possible with open source tools, like you have like, like the Sparrow, like, right? I mean, like, you have this like insane client that supports everything. The crazy maintainer is rewriting HWI because he doesn't like the language. Classic.
I think it's also something like Rodolfo, you see, it's like as someone who's building this stuff, right? Like you're a person who's building this technology, you get an appreciation for like how with a little bit of knowledge, how far you can extend these principles to make it even more accessible and more empowering, rather than trying to like almost scare people like, oh no, it's too scary. You're not sophisticated enough to do that, right? It's the grandma psyop, right? Everyone has, the moment you mention hardware wallet, everyone all of a sudden has 75 grandmothers and why they'll like, this will never work. It's something that's, I think the rate of change in the set of development, multi-sig came out, paid a multi-sig originally, like, I think it was like 2011, 2012, like multi-key, like on stack. And then paid a script hash in 2013, 2014. And like just thinking about like the quality, and we didn't even get like commercially available multi-sig services or like really good user experience wallets until 2016, 2017.
No, they were great. No. We closed it down.
Right.
They were awesome. They were fucking awesome.
There were a couple cowboys before then, totally granted. But the punchline is the level of increase of UX, the order of magnitude leap functions we're getting with this. Just always be a little wary if someone's trying to diminish the power of what a hardware wallet.
Well, I mean, like, everybody has a scam to sell, right? Like, and I mean this with love, as Lex would say.
Everyone's a scammer.
Yeah, Pierre wrote a great article. I Bitsting. I recommend everybody go read. Everyone is a scammer. And everyone should be, right? Like everybody should be trying to like, build something and try to sell your ideas to others, right? Like if that makes you money, then great. Anyways, I get very triggered by the narratives that try to diminish hardware wallets, even the shitty ones, because like they are a substantial improvement in security for 99.9999999% of the people over a fucking computer. It's just no comparison. And if you're going to use a general purpose computer, use fucking Tails. At least it's like professional people behind it. Like, the Raspberry Pis are garbage. Go fucking use a ThinkPad with Tails. It's I went to see one of these projects, GitHub, and I dude, the dependency folder, it's like full Linux in there. There is a fucking user table, all deactivated. But like, pick a distro that doesn't have users. Anyways, it's triggering. The regression in narrative for security is very triggering. But that's just Twitter, though. That's not the real world. In the real world, people get it. Anyways.
So on to item number 3 of the list, right?
Yes. All right. Software releases and project updates. Bitcoin Core version 28.0-RC2. This release candidate brings a fix for performance regression related to block storage. And now to the best part of the show. The reason why we're here. Let's talk about Ethereum. Just kidding. Sparrow Wallet version 2.0. Mr. Craig, do you want to take us through?
Sure. So I'll just describe the reason for the 2.0. It's actually not that exciting, but sometimes in every project's life, you kind of need to go and look at the build process, look at the underlying libraries and all of that. And that's what I've been doing over the last few months. So Sparrow 2 updates Java and JavaFX, which is the UI library that it uses. And some of the really old Macs that you can't upgrade anymore, the ones that are like a decade old, are no longer supported. And I take that stuff pretty seriously because I kind of like the person who is running Sparrow on some, old Mac and kind of keeping it clean, and they only use it for that, and it's sort of a low cost option. So I do get that side of things. It's not like I just want to upgrade to the latest and greatest because I like to play with the new stuff. I do appreciate the need to be able to run on the really old hardware, but sometimes you just have to move forward, and fixing certain issues around the UI and menus on certain Linux distros was just getting to the point where it was time. So generally, I think that time is, for me anyway, 2 years out of when that particular OS is sort of 2 years out of end of life. So OXX Catalina is currently 2 years out from its end of life by Apple, and that was, for me, time to finally ditch it. So that was kind of the major reason, was just to indicate with the version 2, this is a new kind of platform on which Sparrow is being built. It's all, still very robust, but it's all kind of designed to be able to provide a good level to carry things forward. Then in terms of the features, we've got SLIP39 support, mainly in there because the Trezor guys are moving, it would seem, to doing that as the default backup. They're moving away from BIP39 to SLIP39. I don't know as the default or not, but certainly that's what they think the future is. So Sparrow needs to support that, and it now does, with the ability to restore SLIP39 shares. Usually you'll just probably have one share, so it'll be like a BIP39 phrase, but just as a SLIP39 share. Then we got the Trezor Safe 5 and the Ledger Stacks and Flex, which are now supported. And then we have a bunch of stuff. We can now, you can save a text file to sign it, to do a message signing using the COLDCARD format there. So that's been added. And I see some other clients are also starting to do that as well, which is great. We've got a nice little feature. If you've loaded a PSBT, one of the things that PSBTs need are the outputs from the previous transaction, the outputs. And it can now add those, Sparrow can. So it's quite helpful if you just kind of creating your own PSBT.
Oh, very cool.
You don't have that in the background. It'll just find them if it's available from an open wallet.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. A nice little feature for those who like to play, and particularly the devs. The rest of the stuff are actually quite minor. There is some stuff for Crux here, but really at the end of the list here, we've got a bunch of warning dialogues for people who do silly things like assign super high fee rates. And we had somebody who broadcast a transaction recently and for some reason selected SIG hash none as their SIG hash flag, which is the first time that's ever happened, but obviously they lost their money. That all went off to a miner, so hopefully they're going to be able to get that.
How did they do that?
So in Sparrow, before you finalize the transaction, there's a little drop down off on the right where you can change the SIG hash flag for that particular transaction. And they changed it to SIG hash none, even though SIG hash all was the recommended setting. So first time it's happened, there's now a warning that pops up if you try and select SIG hash none. You have to really want to in order to do that. So it's just, people like to have the guardrails on for things that are dangerous, even if you have to really go and do them. And I think COLDCARD does the same as well. It's kind of, if you select something which, is an advanced feature, then there's a big warning first where you have to kind of say, I really understand what I'm doing here. And that's fine.
And we changed the button to say yes. Like it's like a different number that you have to press to say yes. So people don't like go.
Have you scrolled down? Absolutely.
Oh man, it's brutal. People don't read. Like the kind of shit that happens, it's pretty
You got to make those randomly generated, because I go through enough of these doing random buttons. I'm like, oh, it's the number 8 on this one. Okay. And I'm just like memorizing all the shortcut keys as I'm clicking around.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal. I'll tell you another Easter egg later. I told Craig once, but I cannot say it out loud because people are going to do it and then they're going to screw themselves. But
that's pretty much it.
That's awesome, man. I love the image that you guys use. It's pretty.
Like a year ago, we did we have an Austin Bitcoin Design Club, and we would review a Sparrow, and the SIG hash none drop down thing came up in that. We're like, Someone could totally screw themselves with this. Like, no one's gonna touch that. Like, I guess someone did.
Hold my beer.
Eventually, someone will do all the things. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if you grow enough your install base, right? Like the level, like the chances of people being stupid also grows with that, right? Like it's everything in security and usability is just a function of your install base size.
I'm almost mad at myself realizing how easy it would have been to just set up something on ZMQ, looking at all the new transactions broadcasted, looking for a sig hash none just to do this. Like,
well, that's what happened.
Did it all get burned to fees?
It did.
Okay.
So I think maybe we should explain what sig hash none is.
Yeah.
So sig hash is kind of a little flag that you add to the signature on an input when you sign it. And it kind of says, what do I commit this signature? What does this signature commit to? In the case of sig hash none, it doesn't commit to any of the outputs. So that means that, yes, I'm happy to sign this input and to spend this input, but I don't care at all where it goes. So what happened in this case was with the sig hash none, there was a bot that saw this transaction within 4 seconds, which is quite amazing, and replaced it with another transaction that basically spent a very minimal amount of sats to a different address, and the rest of it all went off as a very large fee to the miner. So a bit of a strange bot, because unless the bot is operated by a miner, and even then you've still got a random chance.
I bet there is people out there that their sole business is come up with like, bots that just watch for stupid shit and then, monetize it, right? Like they just send it to themselves. They send it to a miner that they have a deal with. And that's the business model. I mean, like, I bet like they watch shitty entropy keys, the usual.
Yeah. In this case, though, they could have sent it all to their own address, but instead it went to a miner. Unless Foundry is running bots, which I doubt, because they only got a chance of being able to get it, of course, then it just seems to be a really badly written bot. And I would guess something to do with ordinals. That's usually what happens when something's badly written. So that's my best guess.
Was it a lot of money?
Yeah, it was. It was actually about 0.7.
Oof. It's like 50K.
Yeah, it's a decent car.
As related to this, there's the PSBT v0 crate in Rust. People are looking for new maintainers. I just saw the message this morning. So a call to action, if you're a Rust dev and you're interested, check out the PSBT-v0, which just goes into all of this, right? Setting up your sig hash flags and all that stuff.
Very cool, sir. Thank you for your contribution. Thanks for building this.
Very cool.
Somebody has to rewrite HWI in Java and C.
Yeah, I mean, we just got to have any language but Python so we can actually link into it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, guys. I'm not trying to be a Java maximalist here. I'm really not. I can't do this Python thing anymore. It's too much.
That's funny. All right. Next on the list, we have BDK version 1.0-beta 3. Add function for sorting wallet transactions, add option to change default BNB fallback coin selection, fix transaction creation to not skip unused addresses. HWI version 3.1.0, new ledger UDEV rules and model IDs, add support for Trezor Safe 5. Nunchuk Android version 1.9.51, support reproducible build. Liana version 7.0, welcome to the jungle. This release introduces support for Liana Connect as an optional backend for Liana GUI and Electrum server as an optional interface for Liana Daemon, and a few other things here. Liana GUI, they updated a bunch of stuff. Oh, they added a code card and a Spectre DIY to the Taproot descriptors. Keeper desktop version 0.1.1. Oh, so Keeper, that that phone app now has a desktop version. It's like a multi-sig cross-platform app, a bit like a Nunchuk. RoboSats version 0.7.0, Android built-in Torified notifications, a few other things. Wasabi Wallet version 2.2.0.0. They've updated a few things. Taproot receive address, faster transaction broadcasting.
One thing they removed coordinator fees completely, which is pretty interesting.
Right. That's very interesting.
Do you know, Ben, how they prevent Sybil attacks?
They don't know. They just assume minor fees, I guess. But yeah.
And secondly, what's the incentive for running a coordinator now? I mean, before I thought, well, there's obviously risk, but at least you get some fees. Now
you're making a killing; it is worth it, right?
Now, I like, who's going to run a coordinator? I didn't really understand that update, and when I say that, I mean I really don't understand. There's obviously something I'm missing.
Yeah, I mean, they had it like their last 5 or 10 releases. Feel like they all had we're fixing a vulnerability because coordinators could siphon fees in this regard. So I assume they just got tired of that, and they're not making money from the coordinator fees, and they don't want to have to maintain all the vulnerabilities, so they just removed it, I guess. But I don't totally know.
It's we are in a bit of a purgatory for. I mean, Joy Market still works. It's working, chugging along, decentralized. Samurai got forked. Nobody knows who's behind the fork, at least. I haven't heard it, so don't know where that's gonna go. They never finish, right? They're sort of decentralized solution for the coordinator. So
no, it wasn't quite finished. No.
Yeah, I mean, use Joy Markets, I guess, is the best sort of thing to say to people who need to use something.
Yeah, I mean, the battle for privacy, it's certainly at that level, is now in the courts. There's just no other way to say it.
Yes. Hope for the best, expect the worst. It's, right? I mean, what else are you going to... Because, there is all the Monero kids that go use Monero. Well, how do you send your BTC to Monero without getting caught? Without getting de-anonymized, right? It's not that simple. And nobody's going to hold Monero. That's idiotic.
The reason why I implemented Whirlpool was that it was clearly a successful product. I mean, if you, I was listening to Rabbit Hole Recap week after week, and the numbers were just going up week after week, and it was just clearly and obviously a successful product. It's a successful product because it's easy to use. The reason that Join Market is not that, I'm not saying it's not successful, but it's not that, is because it's much more difficult to use. The same with swapping, from Monero into BTC and doing so in a...
Have you looked into making it easy? Because the problem is the biggest issue with Join Market is the clients, right? The clients are essentially unusable to non-programmers. I mean, it really is that simple.
Yeah, I mean, Join Market is kind of an older version of what the Zero Link protocol that the Whirlpool guys uses. And, the biggest issue there is really, finding you've obviously got the maker-taker model, and it's really finding the makers. It's, there's a degree of coordination which is still required, and you can go onto Usenet or these various kind of forums to do it. But if you start to automate that too much and you make that too client-led, then you're going to introduce centralization into that model. There's just no way to avoid it at some level. You've got to have people coming together. And right now we're living in a world where the legality of coordinating transactions with other people using a server is dubious. That's just the world in which we live. There is no getting around that fact. So it's very hard to go out there and build a product which is going to lead you down that path.
Yeah, no, it's pretty tough.
That's where it goes. It just ultimately you can have levels of decentralization here, but I'm certainly quite cautious at this time. I think it's just, as I said, I think the battle's in the courts. We need to see where that goes, have a better knowledge of where we stand before we can delve too deeply into this stuff.
Is Tornado Cash still being used? I can't remember because they didn't take it down, right? It's still running.
So the protocol is still live. It was the front-facing clean client that people were using got taken down. But if you know how to use ETH RPC commands, it's on chain. You can't stop it.
And I mean, people just fork the client and have 50 different versions on. It's tricky. No good answers. Except for the fact that, the government is only going to get worse. I mean, that we know. They're not going to play fair, right? It's just too powerful. Anything that's too powerful, they're not going to play fair. I mean, they ruined PGP, right? They made sure that no major email client had PGP with easy UI. And then LavaBit was the only thing that was close to that. And then, they shut down or they had to change it. So it's that's what they do.
That's true. But I mean, look at the world we live in today where we have WhatsApp, which we might not love, but it's got end-to-end encryption and it's used by billions of people all over the world.
Yeah, but come on, Facebook can see it. Like I can't imagine,
we just don't know. That is the simple truth. We just don't know. There's at least a chance that it's end-to-end.
I know, but if you don't know, you assume they can. Like the way I work at this kind of stuff is very simple. It's like if I can't see, it's happening, right? Like, we do have like Signal, which is, way more provable. Let's put it this way. It's still not quite perfect, but like, it's no comparison really. And I think Facebook is only left alone because, they can see the messages. They couldn't see the messages. I mean, look at Telegram, right? Like, I mean, maybe Telegram, they couldn't see the messages and that's why they arrested the guy, right? And now they can see the messages. You don't get to have secure comms. That's the rule.
Well, I think in Telegram's case, you can see the messages. That's well known unless you open up a secret chat. It's definitely not end-to-end. So
sorry, I meant the secret chats.
Yeah. But I mean, who uses those? That's like a minor usage of the tool.
Yes. MLS is coming to Nostr.
Great.
That I'm looking forward to.
I'm actually somewhat optimistic because, things do move forward and it always seems like they're getting worse in certain respects, but then the innovators keep moving forward and the regulators or government is always trying to catch up. So I don't know. I'm hopeful we're going to get to a better place in the privacy world. That may be optimistic, but I'm still hopeful.
It will. Like, what I meant is more like governments will get worse. Like, they're going to be more intense about things because the technology just keeps on getting better, right? Like, the desperation keeps on intensifying, right? Anyways, all right. SwissBitcoinPay version 2.1.4. BoltzExchange client updated to version 2.1.6. Padawan Wallet version 0.14.1. So this one is interesting. Padawan is essentially like the demo wallet for BDK on iOS. There's this new wallet coming called Cove, which is essentially like an actual wallet for the phone based on BDK, open source. That the Padawan, one of the Padawan devs that's participating as well? Like, anyways,
Matthew is one of the BDK developers who builds Padawan.
Yes, there's one more. Anyways, point is that there is this new wallet coming for the phones. They're going to be awesome. I think it's going to bridge the gap that we had, which is a non-vendor good phone wallet.
What's the name again?
Cove.
Okay.
Cove Wallet. I'll send you an invite to the feedback group.
I'd love to check it out.
Yeah, Praveen is the dev working on it full time, and there's a designer. There's a designer involved. So that's a big one. It's very exciting when there is a designer sort of involved in a wallet project, right? Like for a change, especially on the phone, and it's gonna be great. And there's not gonna be Lightning on it. That's kind of like it's like focused on making good base layer solution for the phone.
Great.
I think is very important.
Yeah.
Boomer chain. Only the Boomer chain.
Boomer chain.
It's got a pretty cool tech stack too. Like the dev, he like made his own like thing where it basically uses like Rust for all the like business logic, but then you write the GUI for like Android and iOS separately in like Kotlin and Swift, like respectively. But like you put just like BDK business logic here, and then it just happens to like port into all the other ones nicely. So I know like Paul, he really likes the
What's cool too is that like if we get like a high quality native native phone wallet that's for base layer, that's FOSS, I think we're gonna have some good forks that are for specific things that people want to do, right? Like it's very conducive to that. Man, like I don't think people appreciate like how hard it is to maintain a client like a wallet, a Bitcoin wallet. It's like, I know you do, Craig, I know you do, Rob.
Yeah.
I know Ben kind of get it.
I used to.
I used to get it. Yeah, it is a lot.
It's a ginormous thing, and there's always a new thing on Bitcoin that needs to be maintained, a new security problem that needs to be addressed, interoperability between all the things. It's a ginormous thing. Ginormous.
It requires maintenance. You're always updating. You got to update libraries. You got to make sure, someone then comes out with a new QR code spec and you have to go do that all over again. There's always something new going on.
Thankfully, the second QR code is becoming the standard.
Public domain, I heard.
Even the haters are adopting. It's great. It's public domain and it's good technology, so people are going to use it. But no, this wallet thing it's hard. It's really hard. Every time when somebody wants to understand Bitcoin and they're a little technical, I always say go buy Jimmy's book and serialize the transaction. If you still want to do it after that, then we talk. Most devs are not cryptographers, right? 99.9999999% of devs are not cryptographers, and Bitcoin is mostly cryptography, very applied cryptography. So it's hard. It's
Yeah. Actually, one of the things that takes the incredible amount of time is getting your application to work across all of the platforms that people want to use it on. You've got people in my world who want to use it on all of these esoteric Linux distros. And fair enough, I can't blame them. That's what they use. But man, that is a challenging thing to try and support a wide range because some of these window managers and things are just buggy. They just are. There's just no other way to say it,
That's Linux.
Yeah.
Buggy. It's a bug itself. It's not even Unix. Do you support FreeBSD? I never checked.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying it's not the hardcore cryptographic stuff. Man, it's I wish I could just focus on that, but it's often not the case.
Have you ever thought about getting a second contributor that all that they do is distribution work? Because that's normally a full-time job, right? It's just for more than one person.
Yeah, I guess it's the idea of hiring people and managing that whole system, because a lot of this work isn't fun. It's not fun to go and run around and try and support some esoteric distro. So you generally volunteer for that kind of work. It's just not something people want to do.
Yeah, it's we thank you for your service. All right, next one here. LiveWallet version 0.8.0, make app build for Linux, improve dynamic styles. BIP39 XOR, it's some fork of SeedXOR. I took a look at it. It's kind of cool that people are trying, but I don't like it.
They're using different ciphers. Isn't the whole point that there is no cipher? It's literally just an XOR?
Exactly.
You don't need to have external information. Just the N of N is enough to recover.
Yeah, and you can't pass the seed checksum through. So the seeds don't have checksum on the parts, which makes the plausible deniability fun of the seed XOR. I think I bring it up, but still, give an opinion.
It gives you an option to use one-time pad or just traditional XOR.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, cool. It looks like a little command line tool. It's actually a shell script, which can't get simpler than that. And it does hex mapping for it's a 5,000 line bash file.
It's not a good idea to do this in bash.
I'm looking at the code and it's one 5,000 line bash file. That's what at least the engine is.
I think it's very cool that people try things, but not all things should be used.
Yeah, it's a docs file. Yeah, I'm just looking at the docs and the README. That's basically a good description. It probably works on FreeBSD though.
Have you bumped into this, Craig?
No, I have not. I have not seen it before.
All right, ESP-Miner version 2.2.0, initial release of the firmware supporting the Gamma, including self-tasks. So they have new hardware. I have two of them. I forgot the version of them. Keeping the house warm here, a baby hash at a time. It's very satisfying. Lottery mining is fun. All right, Project Spotlight, Mutation Core, mutation testing tool for Bitcoin Core. It's a technique used to evaluate the effectiveness of software tests by introducing small changes, mutants, into programs' source code. Padawan Wallet, a simple wallet payment, native Bitcoin wallet to receive donations. BitVore, a P2P computer protocol that can be used by democracies. No. Moving on. The election should be done in paper. That's it. Single day, it's flag day, paper, nothing else. Get it done. Democracy is already broken as it is. No computers. SwapMarket, decentralized marketplace for Boltz-compatible Bitcoin swap providers. NOIST, a non-interactive single round T of N threshold signing schema. Ooh, this is interesting. Enables interested parties to collaboratively create a group key and generate signatures in constant time, preventing a disruptive participation from causing a round to restart.
This is Brock's like Frost alternative or something, but like
okay.
In his tweet, like Jonas Nick, like basically like dismantled it.
Okay, so
yeah,
it's
Jonas.
not nice.
Jonas had some pretty strongly worded opinions on the use of the terms basically being used to describe it as one round non-interactive, and also that there wasn't really a security proof to go along with it. I think, Ben. I have to go find the thread now, but yeah, Jonas. It was not Jonas approved at first glance.
Jonas is a beast. I mean, that's all that there is to it.
Cryptography is one of those things you don't want to. It's cool to try things out.
I mean, the world is run by graybeards. If you care about supply chains, you should care about graybeards. Like there's one dude.
4 people on a boat.
That's right. You know that meme that there's like this whole like stack of blocks. And there's like one guy that holds the whole thing together, who lives in a boat.
That's Jonas.
There was an article recently. Amazon's like one of the most senior engineers lives on a yacht.
Yeah.
And they're doing full back to work. And it's like, I don't think that guy who lives on a yacht, who's like their most senior engineer, is going back. I think he's staying on the yacht.
That's like this in all big companies. Like there is like, literally a handful of people who like the company depends on. The other 10,000 engineers are sort of like replaceable.
It's a square root principle, I've heard. Is that a square root of people? Like if you have 100 people, so 10 of them are half the productive force of the company. Right. Yeah. And among those 10, 3 of them are half of that productive for like 3 people out of a group of 100 are like 25% of the output out of 100 people at a company. Yeah. I
mean, Facebook, up until like a few years ago, they had 5 guys who merged the code of 10,000 engineers.
Oh my God.
That's it. They were the only guys who could make that binary.
I mean, I think it's absolutely true. In the places that I've worked, for sure. It's amazing what a very small number of people can actually achieve. I mean, we have the WhatsApp example as well, which I found amazing. 5 to 6 people were running that thing to billions of users. Amazing, just amazing.
I mean, the internet, like I think it's like 2 dudes that do all the BGP through piping for Google. Like one of them lives on a boat, as well. So it's like, only so many people have the whole code base in memory, and that's it. And they're the guys who understand the system, and good luck. And what happens normally is when these guys are no longer around, companies sort of like carry on with patching the stuff from the surface for a few years, and then eventually breaks. And then everything looks like nothing is working. And then eventually they have to essentially they rewrite everything. Like there's no point. Nobody else going to be able to maintain the previous system. Very common, especially in like mission critical stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a large bank here in SA who I won't name, but it's a well-known fact amongst devs working in that kind of banking space that they have the stack which is basically just patches upon patches, and nobody really has a plan at the corporate level to fix it. So the whole thing just trundles forward, and eventually it's just going to explode. It's a great situation.
Have you guys noticed that on banking, especially commercial banking, like the all the UIs change through the form process? It's because like you start maybe talking to a COBOL mainframe, and then it moves because they can't fix or make it do the other thing that they need, then it moves to another system and it has to re-authenticate everything. And then it's like, it just keeps on like, it's like this awful patch like of stuff. That's because it's like each of those had a guy that's no longer around and they can't fix it.
I mean, the level of fixing requires, it's like CEO level of like, guys, we're going to drop everything and we're going to fix this massive system that everything is built on. And no CEO wants to do that because they've just got so many other things they want to do. So it never happens.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I had an internship for our IT department. And yeah, I was just like a lowly PhD or PHP dev, but they always had a listing for COBOL devs, which no one was. But the engineering manager of the entire IT department, he was the one COBOL dev. They were like, ship breaks, you got to call him in. But he was about to retire, so I don't know what happened if anything broke.
Does he live on a boat?
No.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
I was reading this article about like these banking mainframes that use COBOL. And like one, there is no GitHub. You just make code changes in production.
Yeah.
Like you're directly in the server, right? There's a special IDE code editor that you use just for that. There's no LSP language service provider that's doing all of your fancy little like JetBrains or Cursor or Visual Studio. Like it like makes VI and Vim look like a Rolls Royce. Like it is like
it's
the most
pre-ED. It's pre-ED.
Yeah. It's wild. It's a whole different world that they live in for sure. And it's because no one ever wants to update it. But remember, Bitcoin's too complicated. It'll never work. You know, that we use C++ from, 2007 is probably, is the foundational code.
Yeah. But we're the guys who aren't safe.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah. And remember, like, their database can blow up and it's fine, but we have tens of thousands of backups of our database. And it's okay.
Yep. I mean, wires disappear all the time.
Yeah.
Just going to put that out there all the time. And then it takes a month of investigation, and it's not like they find it. It's just that they find that it was their fault, so they give you the money back. It's not that like it's not like they're unwinding a transaction that they actually got to the bottom of it. No. They just found who's liable. That's all.
But having that little escape route means that they never have to fix it.
That's right.
And that's the great thing that Bitcoin has. I think it's actually a great point. It's like the reason that we have these hardware wallets, and to your point, MBK, that are like so extreme, that we've gone so tinfoil hat on, is because there is no backup plan. If it's gone, it's gone. It's gone forever, and you're never getting it back, and no one's going to come and say, don't worry, we'll fund you. It doesn't happen. So without all of that behind it, we have to fix everything every time. Otherwise, people are like, I'm never going to trust this thing again. Whereas the banking industry doesn't have that. So they never have to fix anything. They just go through life, and it's just, it's, oh, well, something happened that's deep in that system. No one's going to fix that system. We'll just refund the client.
Yeah, I don't think people outside of Bitcoin understand like the level of like intensity in which goes when you make Bitcoin software. It's like, you can't fuck up, period. Like there's no room.
No.
Right? Like, because money gone.
No, you have specs and you can't deviate from the spec. There's no like, I decided to, like everything is on really tight rails. And I made this observation very early on in AnchorWatch is that Bitcoin has like these like security rituals that we instantiate, and like kind of like these like when you like visit your hardware wallet, when you do these things. And it's because there is no refunds in Bitcoin. And what you're ultimately doing is you're self-insuring. Because like if it fucks up, there's only me to blame. There's no one else to talk to, right? And that's where we get metal plates. That's where we get multi-sig. That's where we get like all of these like very physical, real things that you can touch, redundancies and fail safes that allow you to avoid cascading failures, right? And you always want to avoid that risk of ruin where you have maybe you have a multi-sig, but all three of them are sitting in your desk drawer, right? You're not really that distributed then if someone comes to your house with a wrench, right? So like trying to understand how do you distribute out risk so you don't have these catastrophic centralizations that just like wipe you out entirely. And that goes to the network architecture with nodes. That goes to how you handle your keys. That goes to everything.
Yeah, man. It's fun though. It really is fun. That's where the buck stops. So, all right. So next, I was just walking out of the wind because it was getting a little out of control there. It must be like 60-kilometer-hour winds. Shielded CSV, private and efficient client-side validation. There wasn't a white paper for this. Don't know much about it.
Yeah, I saw like Rindell and a couple of people that are really excited about it. I didn't get a chance.
Rindell gets excited about everything.
That's true. That's true. I heard he just shut down his pager company. He's looking for new businesses to start working on now.
Oh, that's great. We'll have Rindell opine on this on the next visit. Vinteum introduces Bitcoin Dev Launchpad. It's a 3-month program for Brazilian developers to enhance their skills in Bitcoin and Lightning Network. That's cool. Bitcoiner's Intro to Rust is now publicly available. Hey, Craig, the question that everybody wants to know, why not Rust?
I'd be happy if somebody else, I'm not a Rust dev myself, but if somebody wanted to write it in Rust, Java can very happily link into Rust. No worries there. But since nobody really wants to do this sort of work. So again, it's if you want, do it yourself.
There is a Rust HWI library. I don't know if it's just a wrapper for.
I think it was just a wrapper.
It's a wrapper, yeah, because it actually also works because I was poking around with it. The Rust HWI, I think it's the Liana guys, the Wizard Sardine dudes that were. Oh, this is different. Oh, this is Bitcoin Dev. I'm looking at the link right now. Interesting. Okay, I'll have to give this a look.
Internally uses Pi03 to call HWI functions.
So it's a wrapper of the HAS work.
So if you want to call Python from Rust from Java, this is your go-to.
I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
We just got to go full circle and get all of the language bindings.
Yeah.
Like Rust, I wouldn't be interested, but I think the push has that shitcoin push kind of thing. It's people are excited about it. People want things to happen in it, but it's just that the people who are building on it already have a thing that they use. And then, I don't know, there's this weird push on it that it's not fun. Remember when Golang was the thing? It was going to change everything because it was C for people that can't do C. Right, Fit Jeff?
Yeah.
He's not listening. He fell asleep.
Oh, yeah, 100% listening. Anyways, yeah. I mean, for the people who listen to this pod, for the one person listening to this pod who doesn't know languages, it's like teams. Okay, everybody hates the other team. Everybody has all the opinions about the other team. Everybody thinks that the referee is cheating. It's yeah.
What we're ultimately doing is we peaked at C, and everyone doesn't want to do it.
Yes.
Get into the seaweed. So you try to find what's the best thing that can do C-like things without it being C.
Yes. Nobody wants to manage memory.
Exactly. No one's doing memory allocations.
And then because they don't know how to do it, they break shit and then they blame C. That's really ultimately the problem.
Go at least can do for loops in parallel. That's a nice thing. So Python's ultimate Achilles heel is doing a for loop.
Hey, there was this great meme. If you know assembly, everything is open source.
I saw that.
That's great.
That was the best meme.
That's actually a good one.
True. Anyways, this has divulged into a shitty dev podcast. Let's move forward with project.
A peak Bitcoin.review podcast then.
Language.review.
That's right.
Silent Payments Faucet Online. That's the next one on the list.
Look at that. Yeah.
Very cool.
Ashigaru, a self-custodial, open-source, secure Bitcoin wallet that is private by design.
This is the fork of the Samurai.
Okay.
So you can now...
Keeping with the Japanese theme.
Yes. So to my understanding, the coordinator functionality is not online at the moment, but you can turn it on and you can do... with paynims, you can do those kind of joins and stuff. So if you still have post-mix outputs from when the Samurai service coordinator went offline, you can pick it back up from here.
I think it's great that people keep on poking at the bear.
So I'm looking at the high level of this. They put a lot of effort into being a little bit more censorship resistant. The code base is just on Tor. You can't go at a ClearNet and find it. So I haven't looked too deeply into the project, but I saw a couple tweets about it when it was being announced. Like you said, the code's still there. It's still accessible. So people are, finding ways to build on top of it.
Here's an interesting fact. The word Ashigaru refers to the the infantry employed by the samurai class of feudal Japan.
So the infantry is coming to save the samurai.
Exactly.
Oh, look at that! I like
There you have it.
There you have it. Okay, Bitcoin Scoresby retro movie poster turned into Bitcoin ads. BConf, discover all the Bitcoin conferences happening worldwide in one place. Is this PodConf approved?
Is it PodConf approved? We'll have to see if they've verified as real plebs and find out.
That's right. If the PodConf people listen to this pod, I want to see a boost letting us know if it's approved or disapproved. All right, vulnerability disclosures, more. PIXHELL Attack, acoustic data leak from LCD. Nice. Love the shit. This is really cool. So the PIXHELL Attack exploits noise from LCD screens to leak sensitive data, even in air-gapped systems. So this is similar to the Tempest attack that was done on OLED. We have mitigations for this on our device. We just add noise and we do random writes. So you can't really know what's happening. But yeah, I mean, this is bound to happen. Marko Polo. Cyber criminals launch global infostealer campaign targeting crypto users. Infostealer, not interstellar. Infostealer. The group primarily targets cryptocurrency users and influencers, gaming personalities. Nice. So they use a bunch of stuff. It's just a gang.
Interesting. Tangential. Junseth got another phishing attack person. That was like an hour long. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I've also been getting my own now and recording them. And he has a gift of getting them to just talk and explain everything. Really is special.
Oh yeah, he ego strokes them, and then they get even more into it. It's hilarious.
He's now a celebrity in that community. Like they got excited that they went to fish someone. It was Junseth. They're like, "Oh, I got Junseth." And it's like they got like the.
That is so funny. $5 wrench attack. The leader of a group involved in home invasions across the U.S. Great. Don't keep seeds at home, people. Please. Don't. Social engineering attack. How a group of threat actors targeted a single Genesis creditor on, oh, look at that, in August. Relieved them of 4,000 Bitcoin.
This was a big phishing attack. So They managed to... Google swap them out. And so if you use like Gmail with your phone number, like basically like when you sign in to use Gmail with your phone, Android or Apple, you automatically tie that device to like your recovery for said email. And so you'll like, they basically get Google, and this just keeps on happening. I mean, like this is what happened to John Seth that I've been recording it. They call you pretending to be Google support. And they represent, hey, I'm here to help you. I want to kind of go through all these steps. You're going to get a push notification on your phone. Can you like approve it? And I took a screenshot of it because they spoofed the device name to call Google support. So it says,
and they use Google
support.
Forms. They use Google Forms for some of the emails. Yeah.
They use, I have the emails. Yeah. Because I've been documenting it all.
It's amazing. Like it's the real domain.
It's the real domain. Yeah. It's
Google
weird.
Login got fully owned, DNS
SSO,
owned.
You're right.
Yeah,
Google SSO
and nobody talks
about
it. Completely disappeared. I'm still amazed. I thought it was going to be the history of like the story of the century.
The end of SSO, right? You'd think it'd be the end of SSO because yeah.
Yeah, but no, completely killed the story and nobody talked about it.
Wild stuff.
Oh, Google. German law enforcement agencies have performed successful timing analysis attack against Tor. Hard to believe.
Timing analysis. Is this like following the hops in the network? Because I understand a timing analysis in Bitcoin, right? Where you're like, oh, you receive the money, you only send it between daylight hours of Eastern Standard Time, right? So we assume you're there. You know what I mean? Like there's ways of doing that, but I don't understand in Tor how that
They're
works.
probably looking at like your pings from the different nodes to the same destination, and then they try to look at your path back.
Got it.
I mean, I'm just extrapolating here.
Like if a round trip takes 1 second, and every second you and the server are talking, and it's like, okay, maybe.
Okay, and then Tor project address concern over law enforcement, attacked outdated Ricochet application. Right, supply chain attack. We talked about this in the Lebanese explosion point. Oh man, I'm still amazed at the the level of. I mean, like, aside from the people issue, like the sides, all the bullshit, like it is pretty insane.
Also, quick question. So the nature of how the cold card works, don't you like epoxy it to the case? So if you tried breaking the case, you would like rip out the chips? Is that?
No, we removed the epoxy because the level that Don John got to with the lasers and stuff, anybody that has access to lasers and things can remove epoxy.
Right.
And the epoxy was not it's not to help against opening the case. The case is it's welded, right?
Sure.
Like you can open it, but like, it will leave some marks and stuff. It really is like every little bit sort of like that counts towards like a defense in depth kind of thing.
Depth and breadth. Yeah.
Yes. But the epoxy was more helpful against certain attacks, like trace attacks and things like that. But again, it's like there was no point after they got to a certain level. So we just took it out. There's no point in adding it. It makes QA harder anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Privacy and other related projects. So Simple X got updated. Tails got a major update as well. Update of Onion Share. Sideband. Sideband is an extensible LXMF messaging client. So Sideband is one more client for RNS and LXMF, which is like this very cool sort of like, I like to call it like, this is where like the bleeding edge of nerd networking sort of like is at. Like, it's encrypted by default, it's private by default, it's store and relay some of the stuff, and it's like, if the world right now, if the internet was turned off, you'd probably go find my podcast there. It's there, by the way. I have a page there for the podcast. There's a page for the Bitcoin paper. There's like I have a node there. It's fun, and you can connect that to radios. It's designed so that it can be on mesh nets, it can be on like LoRa, it can be on HF, it can be on anything really. Is a crypto, like a retired like he was not a Bitcoiner, he was like a crypto guy who sort of like speared ahead of this. It's a very cool project. Highly recommend people checking it out. So reticulum-meshchat is one of the clients. NomadNet is another one. It's a lot of fun. Project Spotlight, RPGP, OpenPGP implementation in Rust. Discord introduces Dave protocol offering E2. Discord is a shitcoin. Lightning L2 Plus. Brick Wallet, a simple wallet web front end for Nostr Wallet Connect. Cool. LN Rack, a tool for streamlining recurring Lightning payments. Ben, anything here that like you're looking forward to chatting about?
I don't know. I've been kind of like staying away from Lightning stuff recently after my departure from uni. But I don't know. I mean, it's cool to see more people doing NWC stuff. I think that like has a lot of promising. If you click on it, it's pretty basic a website. Oh, this is a super testnet. So yeah, but I mean, it's fun to see more NWC stuff happening. I love Nostr, but I feel like the social media part is too overhyped, and the NWC part is underhyped.
Well, but NWC is pretty new, right? I mean, it was really just sort of created a year ago.
Yeah.
For the people that don't know, that's Nostr Wallet Connect. Is a way for you to control your Lightning wallet through Nostr.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can authenticate into your Lightning node or wallet to really like send and receive transactions without having to actually like connect to it through other protocols.
Yeah, for me and you, we used it for subscription payments, which was really nice. And I would love to see like people do it for like basically like, I'm on Amazon, I link my credit card, and now I never need to like type in my credit card number again. Like I'd love to see that for like checkouts where it's just like, oh, I'm buying gift cards on the Bitcoin company, and it's like, okay, just, I don't need to go and pay this invoice manually every single time. It just happens, and like that'd be fantastic.
Do you know what we need? We need one more Twitter client on Nostr.
Yes,
that's what we need.
Craig, are you on Nostr much? I've seen you around, but not much.
Yeah, I'm starting to browse more. I must say, I'm starting to definitely spending a bit more time reading.
Okay.
I don't generally post much anywhere, so I guess I'm there as a reader, not a writer. It's more just, if I write something, people will reply, and then I'll forget to check it for 3 or 4 days. I'll just be like, this guy doesn't, take part. So it's, I read.
That's a good thing. Don't participate on social media. It's the best way. Phoenix Wallet version 2.3.9. They fixed the UI and a few other little things. LNbits version 0.12.11. Exclude to list BTC price providers and a few other updates. Minibits. I think that's part of LNbits or no? No, minibits-wallet version 0.1.8. LNDG version 1.9.0. Light GUI web interface to analyze LN data and leverage the backend database for automation tools around rebalancing and other basic maintenance tasks. Cool. Lightning Terminal upgraded. Aqua Wallet upgraded. All right.
Before we get to the next section, did you guys see this ARC mainnet that was run?
Oh yeah.
Second BTC. Did we miss that?
I don't think we had it on the list. I forgot.
Did it not get on the list?
I forgot to add.
Yeah, so I haven't looked at the actual TXID myself yet, but there's looks like a new company called Second, 2NDBTC on Twitter. I don't know if they're on Nostr yet, but they're just doing solutions for integrating ARC. And I imagine they're doing some sort of off-chain thing because you don't have the opcodes to actually do the virtual UTXOs, right? With the Covenant functionality.
They do it with just multi-sig basically everywhere. The user has to co-sign everything.
Okay.
So it requires always online, but it's a start.
I mean, what's interesting is just as a concept is they're kind of working within the current design space to show what can be done, right? And being like, hey, we can make this more efficient on chain and better UX if we were to get the incremental opcode. If anyone's working on stuff involving other opcodes, Ben, you should probably use that as a good example for how to do some stuff.
Totally agree.
All right. Nostr's Project Spotlight. Nostr Social Graph. Build a solid graph from Nostr. Follow events. We're roster official release of new Nostr client that supports native location pinning and check-ins. Git workshop.dev, a decentralized Git workflow on Nostr for freedom lovers. This one seems interesting. It seems like the beginning of something interesting. NGit, a command line tool to send and review patches via Nostr. So there is a lot. I mean, there's also a big bounty, but there is a lot of effort going on into essentially replacing GitHub with Nostr. It's perfect for that. Public broadcast system, right? GitHub is a liability. It's a real liability, especially the non-Git stuff, right? The pull requests, the metadata, the issues, that stuff is the real value of the conversation around software, right? And that stuff needs to be not taken down, and Git doesn't resolve those.
It's also security things, right? I think I've been on 3 different episodes of Bitcoin.review where Git and messing with metadata has allowed for you to be able to access things you shouldn't be able to, like the way Microsoft architects all of those files being stored online. It's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, GitHub been hacked a million times already, right? And then there's all the issues with those phishing exploits on open issues where they post a link or whatever, and then maintainer clicks on and it's boom, key's gone, whatever.
And basically, every community support ticket we get on GitHub now, at least we'll get one spammer just being oh, here's a malicious link, and sometimes it's a malicious link and it says Sparrow. I'm like, okay, this is not, you're on the wrong repo. This is me. But yeah,
couldn't even get that right.
They're not sending their best.
But this is one of the reasons why we keep the issues closed. I mean, people who need to get a hold of us, they know how easy it is. It's just, GitHub issues have extremely poor public issue moderation. The moderation tools are horrible. Anyone who's been victim of spam or trolling on their issues knows it's such a fucking time sink and a pit of sorrow. It's just disable. And it's gone. Email is amazing.
If you like actively watch the Bitcoin Core issues, it's like a nightmare there. Like, just so many people, like, those be issues of, like, I think Bitcoin's bad for the environment. It's like, why are you making it a GitHub issue?
I mean, Bitcoin is software, right? So, I mean, change the code. You need to open an issue. All right. Sat Shoot, a freelance app for freedom lovers using Nostr. Known Nostr attack. Create a list of known public attacks on Nostr network. That's cool. ForoWiki, a forum theme inspired long form Nostr client. For the people who are looking to, there's also Wikifreedia. It's another wiki replacement. White Noise, secure messaging over Nostr. I mean, I'm really like the only, I keep on telling all the Nostr devs to just like, can you guys just please turn off DMs on Nostr until MLS is in? Like, people don't understand there's no forward privacy on the Nostr DMs. So like if they ever leak their key, it's like, oh, your DMs are gone, right? Like
White Noise is double ratchet, right? This is the full on good stuff encryption.
Yeah, no, this is like really, really like Jeff is spending a lot of time making the shit work in a way that also works like with good UX. So it's not like some convoluted weird shit. I think the only compromise is going to be like you have to send a link, like you have to like essentially enroll somebody into your ratchet. But it's really cool, and it works for groups.
That's cool.
So it's like it's also group. Yeah, it's a group chat thing, and you can kick people out. And I think if I remember right, when you kick somebody out, they can essentially start a fork of the ratchet, like in the group. So like, you can see which one has the better idea now, motherfucker. It's kind of cool.
Let the market decide.
Exactly.
I have to manage my merge conflicts in my group chats now.
Mm-hmm. Polarama, a Nostr-based polls app for proof of work contactless filtering. Zap Delivery, a new food delivery app built on Nostr. Look at that. Nostr Personality Analyzer. Oh, this was really funny. Discover insights from your Nostr posts. So like essentially just roasts you. Highly recommend people putting their NPub there. It's really funny. Alfama releases 3 micro apps, Note, and a few things here. Okay, I'm not gonna go through the updates because it's all web, right? So like everything updates all the time. All right. Any projects, any Bitcoin projects that we maybe forgot to mention? Any AnchorWatch updates, Rob?
AnchorWatch updates. The wallet is live and running. All of the remaining open items are just kind of the compliance side of things. I'm hoping to have a more meaty update with actionable things. I've started storing some of my Bitcoin on it. Just, dog fooding it, making sure I feel super happy and confident before we're getting ready to go live. It's cool being able to just abstract away most of these complexities when it comes to more advanced script construction using time locks and multiple spending paths, right? We're starting with pay-to-witness script hash. I'm fairly confident we'll be able to roll out Taproot support by the end of the year. It's just like one more thing just to kind of like clean up on the UX side and making sure signers and everything are all like happy and jiving with it. It's a long time coming. Happy to say all the tech works.
Well, you guys are doing all the crazy shit with like mini script and
yes.
Is that going to be part of the launch? Yeah, right. That's the whole point.
Yeah. No, it's the whole thing, right? So that's the whole wallet. Like that's the whole kind of like essence of the experience and kind of like how we're offering a differentiation in options.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest hope is that it gives people something to play with and have a little more confidence and understanding of how this could all work.
Right.
On the technology side, it's great. I think I've mentioned it before, just to like, because you mentioned it, like mentioned what I'm working on, like Bitcoin Dev Kit really is a superpower for all of this. Being able to not have to re-implement public-private key cryptography. Under the hood, just fundamentally, like with any other kind of Bitcoin coordinator service, it's abstracting away descriptors and PSBTs in a really clean user interface.
Mm-hmm.
That I actually, very funnily, I'll even drop miniscript PSBTs into Sparrow just to show it, and I can actually kind of go through. Like, it's nice to have. This is just a shout out to Sparrow. Like when you dump in like a PSBT or like a TXX, you actually can get a full deconstruction of like, oh, this is the signature for this key, and this is the signature for this key, right? It's a really nice transaction visualizer. The other one is BIP174.org because we were talking about PSBTs earlier. Like I'm neck deep in those all of the time. it's a great way to just kind of get all that data. And also what I love what Sparrow does is it actually looks at the end lock time. So just as a very brief tangent, just on the technical side, the way time locks work in Bitcoin, I'm going to start. We use check lock time verify, which is absolute time locks. It actually references the original time lock Satoshi implemented called end lock time. And what check lock time verify does is it verifies, hey, your end lock time must be this. It doesn't match that in the transaction field, like the top level. And what this allows you to do is originally when you had Satoshi's implementation, it was not consensus enforced. Think of it end lock time, somewhat like if you had a check and you could write a date on the check. And I can hand you a check for the future. I could write you a check today, which is like January 1st, 2026. And if you hold on to it, as long as I have a bank account on January 1st, 2026, you can take it, right?
Yep.
So that's when Satoshi implemented. And Sparrow does visualization of that. And you can also do block height, or you can do actual clock time. When you use check lock time verify, it's actually a logic check and say, hey, I think this is actually Peter Todd back in 2014, like the first like opcode soft fork that we leveraged, was it would say, hey, you're attesting to this end lock time. Does the transaction actually have this end lock time? And then it makes it consensus enforced. Whereas in this like post-dated check metaphor, I could just close my bank account and walk away before the check comes due, and then you're kind of out of luck. That's the way it originally was implemented, but that Satoshi did. Instead, if you have the check lock time opcode that's checking this, once the money is deposited at that address on chain, it is a lockbox and it will not move until you actually have a transaction signed that has an end lock time. So Blockstream has a repo with kind of like some of our starter descriptors that are like executing all of this. You can see, depending on what spending condition you're using different lock times and lock times in the transaction field. It's all like I'm getting, because we're on Bitcoin.review, I'm getting all the technical weeds of it all. As an end user, it just works, which is just a really powerful thing. And what I actually do in parallel is I'll load the descriptor that we're using with AnchorWatch in our wallet called Trident, and I'll load the descriptor into Bitcoin Core, and I'll get the same deposit addresses. And when I do spends, I'll get Bitcoin Core wallet verifying and showing the same exact transaction history, right? So we're in a really great spot as it goes to the technical stuff. We're offering insurance details I can't announce because we're just finalizing the final contractual terms, and insurance is heavily regulated. You can't say you have insurance until you have it, right? That said, very exciting details imminently coming. But on the tech side, it's all opened up, and I've now been thinking about other ways to make it work. This is between just Miniscript and Bitcoin Dev Kit. It's very modular and very clean. So if we want to be able to start working on different vault constructions, I've chatted with you offline, Rodolfo, about like high level ideas. Like I think there's a lot of great opportunity space that you could start leveraging these time lock tools in a clean user interface to make people feel comfortable using it. The one big caveat is just like a multisig, you have to have that output descriptor, right? You need to have that output descriptor to be able to reconstitute the redemption script on chain so that you can actually show, hey, this address, right, which is a hash of a script. You need to show the pre-image of the original script to show that that hash matches the address encoding. So just having the keys is not enough. It's the same thing with a multisig. That said, if you can back up that, this is now turned into a more just like if you're using multisig in general, right? You have that output descriptor. The output descriptor does not contain private key information, but it maintains that publicly viewable information. So if someone gets access to your output descriptor that has public keys in it, they can't spend the money, but they can look at the full transaction history, right? Because it's what you're using to actually build PSBTs and generate deposit addresses and do all the sanity checking and logic.
Well, I mean, once you make one transaction, you dox your M of N.
That too. To start, because it's pay to witness script hash, I'm looking to turn on mini TapScript and TapScript by the end of the year. So you actually won't, which gets really cool.
That's the beauty, right? Like, it's a huge deal.
It's a huge deal, and it's a much smaller hurdle compared to everything else we've done up to this point. It's such an easier hurdle. Very exciting stuff. But yeah, it's all moving along well.
Who was it? It was a big exchange. I can't remember if it was Bitfinex or one of them. They doxed the location of, I think, one of the executives, and also because of how they did a lot of like analysis on their multisig or whatever. I can't quite remember the story anymore, but like it was essentially like multisig doxing. I can't remember if it was just the coins or the location of the guy or who had what key. And anyways, like you're putting very sensitive like data on chain once you sign them, right? On P2SH.
You have to. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Thanks. It's a long working time coming, but very excited to be able to actually kind of get that out for the world to see. And then I'll be living in Craig's world of thinking about being able to deploy it, because we're starting with a web app, but then like if you want to be able to download a desktop version of it, if you want a mobile app, like all these distribution angles that start, once the code works, that's only half the battle. You have to start figuring out, how can I get this running on FreeBSD so Rodolfo stops harassing me on Master DMs that he uses all the time.
Well, no, I'm perfectly happy on Macs. Like, Macs are the daily driver of sane, productive people. Okay. FreeBSDs are for servers and for dev environments. But like, that's it. Like, there's no other system.
Yeah.
We should stop deploying to other systems. Don't encourage this stupidity.
Rob, do you have do you have sort of a standardized output descriptor format?
Yeah. So I'm actually gonna I'll put a link here. This is what we're using, and this is you can put in show notes, Johnny, if you want to. Just dropping it here. This is what we're doing, right? So just to for those listening along at home who don't want to go through GitHub repos, the conceptual paradigm shift in what we're doing by leveraging Miniscript is this idea of joint custody. And now when you start thinking about how Bitcoin works, right? We started with single sig, then you had multi-sig, and those use opcheck sig, opcheck multi-sig, which basically gives you a thumbs up, thumbs down, does this work or not for your quorum. Bitcoin opcodes, though, there's 140 opcodes that are in production. And what Miniscript is a project that started with Peter Will and Andrew Polstra and Sanket, the emerging graybeards and graybeards of how Bitcoin kind of runs today. Depending on your definition of who a graybeard is, I know that could be contentious, but the people who write all of the code for the most recent consensus changes for Taproot and SegWit came together, and they basically figured out that if you were to take 20 of these opcodes, you can distill them down into fragments where you can get things like, well, first off, you get 3 security checks: your key checks, your hash locks, and your time locks. And then you can use Boolean logic like and or with thresholds. And you can start collecting these together like Lego bricks. I would check out the Bitcoin Dev Kit Playground if you want to take a look at this yourself if you're a developer. And what you do is you can start doing really interesting constructions like, hey, for us, for the length of your insurance contract, to move the money, it requires both an AnchorWatch multisig and your multisig. Right. And then let's say for a 1-year insurance policy, 6 months in, the customer lost 2 of their 3 keys. We can have it be one of the customer keys, right? And then the AnchorWatch keys. And let's say the customer lost all of their keys. Someone broke into their house, stole everything. We actually, for a 1-month window at the tail end of the policy, can have it be AnchorWatch plus a third party that could come together and move the funds, all with regulated insurance, underwriting the whole policy for your UTXOs specifically, your output descriptor to be exact. And then finally, when your insurance policy expires, you don't want to work with us anymore. You can just move the funds yourself, right? So it's this idea that you're able to use op if, op not if, op else, and this idea of conditional branching logic of how Bitcoin works. And you can actually encode all of that into a Bitcoin address. And now you have this idea of a Bitcoin address that has many ways to spend based on the passage of time. So the link that I dropped in the chat, you guys can take a look at, visualizes these different layers and how they can work. Now, to be clear, this is just our take for what we're starting with. I think there's a whole universe here. You could have co-signing services that you could have it be fully sovereign where there's a co-signing service for a year, right? And then after a year, the co-signing service disappears and it's just your keys. So there's never an opportunity at any point the funds can move without you also signing on it. You can start doing some really cool HSMS kind of services that kind of embed with this too, right? Think about I want to have these whitelisted addresses and I want to only spend X or Y Bitcoin a month. And, what if the HSM or the service rugs you? Well, you just wait for the time lock to expire, then you can move the money without them, right? This is the idea of using Bitcoin as programmable money to extend the design space and the security space and how Bitcoin can work in a way that can kind of serve you in the longer term inheritance. The Liana guys do this at Wizard Sardine, where they just have different layers. You can have it be your funds. And then with your funds, let's say it's 2 of 3, but if the money hasn't moved in a year, it can go to a 3 of 5 of your lawyer and your family. Right. And so before the time lock expires, they can't do anything with the money anyway. So it's this really interesting idea of expanding the expressivity of Bitcoin in a way that it works. And the really big breakaway with this was the COLDCARD added support for this on the Edge firmware. Ledger added support. So signing devices are now being able to in larger part access this, which was the huge unlock for someone like me, a mid-curve, just wallet dev, right, to be able to kind of stand on the shoulder of giants and start really executing all of this stuff. Is that you had Bitcoin Dev Kit and all of the work that Sipa and Polstra were doing in Sanket, and then you had the wallet devs there. So you had the protocol guys and you had the hardware wallet guys all came together to allow application devs to really be able to build it and take it off with Bitcoin Dev Kit.
There is a couple of things here that they've been in talks. One is, because we have the meme of a mini script voting accident, right? That's that's a concern. So there's been talks between multiple parties to like create like a let's call it like safe approved mini scripts. That like live on some repository somewhere. They're like everybody goes like these are kosher, right? We've tested, we've audited, these are good. Because the design space is ginormous, so that means the possibility of screwing yourself are ginormous too. So there is that. The other issue is until we have covenants, all these things require UTXO rotation, right? Like that there is no way around that. That's the part that sucks. For people who don't plan on spending, this is amazing, right? Like so you stick your but the thing is like I think like a lot of people don't think about this. Like you can create multiple UTXOs, right? Like to that, and you only have to rotate the ones you span. Mm-hmm. You don't have to rotate the whole thing.
Yeah. So this goes to, there's two different types of time locks in Bitcoin. I'll keep it brief because I know
we'll chop this and we'll like put on the fucking internet. Like guys, if you have to listen to something about mini script or time locks, like read to Rob, go to town on it.
So there's two kinds of time locks in Bitcoin, right? There's absolute time locks and there's relative time locks. Absolute is just at this block height or at this date, something unlocks and something happens. A relative one is kind of like a dynamic deadman switch where the timer resets when you move the funds. So to your point, Rodolfo, like you could have a setup in such a way where you have it where maybe for a relative time lock, the maximum it can do is 15 months. That goes into BIP 68 and all the details. But let's just say you can go 60, it's 2 to the 32 minus 1 blocks, right? So it's 65,000 blocks, which is roughly 15 months. And so if every 15 months, if you move the funds once every 15 months with a relative time lock, like you're great, you're good. You could also combine these two. You could have it be a relative time lock of 15 months, but then like 65,000 blocks, but maybe also an absolute time lock of block height 2 million. For example, right? Like you could use both of these combination wise, but you're right. You have to, once you introduce time as an element into the security of your Bitcoin, you now have to manage your UTXOs across time to make sure you're only letting the intended ways you want to be able to spend your Bitcoin to be possible. And it definitely adds a new layer of UX and like consideration and security things, right? An option two is maybe you just pre-sign transactions sending them to yourself and you just hold them in your pocket and then you broadcast them. If it's like every 15 months, every 13 months, you just broadcast the transaction. And maybe if you guessed your fee rate wrong, you either, you either pay a miner out of band or you use the mempool transaction accelerator to keep on bumping it, right? Like there's better tooling now where if you have a valid transaction, you can keep it in your pocket and broadcast it at a later date to kind of help with that UTXO management.
What happened to the watch? Like, remember there was like a non-pinning, like there was some stuff, I forgot the actual term, but conceptually, like there was something that was being worked on so you could replace the fee on something like this.
Anchor outputs, was it? Like zero fee? Like you basically
there was something. Yeah, there was something that people were working on because like, at the end of the day, there was a way out.
Yeah, so on-chain, I think this was used for Lightning. Sorry, my computer skipped for a second. They were like anchor outputs they were using for Lightning that you could just have like a single like dust UTXO that you could bump at a later time. That kind of pulls the whole transaction forward through a child pays for parent.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've read through this, Rob, and it's very cool. The one thing that I see from my kind of point of view is, it would be nice if, I understand this is just one example, but if we were to standardize on a particular, I think MVK was kind of getting at this as well, but if we were to say, okay, this is the default, right? There are other ones you can choose, but this is the default. Then we can build a nice UI around this, right? Because as soon as you start saying, well, in certain situations we want 2 or 3, but then in other situations we want 3 or 4 of the first group, and then 3 or 5 of the second group.
Totally.
That's where the UX starts to really get quite hairy.
Absolutely.
So from my point of view, I'm been kind of waiting for the day where we say, as an industry, and I don't think that day has arrived yet. I'm just saying, seeing it coming down the path. is where we say, okay, this is the default, give it a nice name, and then you choose a wallet and you say, I want the, ABC XYZ wallet. And it means that you will have the, layer 1 is 2 of 3. So there is no other path. And then you are able to build a fixed UI around that.
The cool thing is you have you're going to have Sparrow, do a check mark on it. Yes, we support this. COLDCARD supports this, and this other thing supports that. And you feel as a user, fairly confident that this kind of script is going to be supported. But I think the main thing is at least in my view, you got to approach this from two sort of angles. One is going to be what I missed from the old ColdCard.com, Coinkite.com, which was savings account, checking account. As a user, I have absolutely no idea how the shit works, but it's kind of the expected behavior is similar to analogies I have in my life today. And then our job is to sort of figure out how to do that best. But then you have the wizard mode, which is you go through this questionnaire. It's how many family members do you have? How many of them do you trust? Do you have a lawyer? Do you have this? Do you have that? Have that, right? We go through that. Do you live in a dangerous country? You have a few questions, right? That then creates the correct setup and then explains to you this is the kind. And it would still be very narrow, right? Each of there'll be just a few sets. It's not a full fucking design space, but because ultimately the issue is people have very different lives.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to say this is the rule them all sort of solution,
I 1,000% agree. And right. And so, and Craig, I also agree with you to your point that there should be a more generalizable one. We basically dog fooded for our specific business, use case that we're addressing. I think a very low hanging fruit would just be, what about degrading multisig, right? Or we talk about where maybe it's a 3 of 5 that becomes a 2 of 5 after a year. I don't know, maybe those are things that I think are very applicable to a lot of people who would want to start kind of upgrading their security in new ways and feel safe about it. And the code itself, conceptually, is actually very straightforward to audit, because a 3 of 5 that becomes a 2 of 5, what it actually is under the hood in Bitcoin script, it's a 3 of 6. And there's 6 conditions. There's the 5 keys and the 1 time lock. And what you do is you basically add a check where if you satisfy the time lock, you add 1 onto the stack and you may see, hey, have I met 3 conditions at the end? So it's not and maybe I just kind of geek out on all of the details and opcodes. You could diagram this out pretty straightforwardly and get a sense of safety from it. And I agree with you. There should be, this is also the reason why I think a lot of people haven't charged forward with this yet, even though this has been around for years, is that it requires a new bespoke UX. So we've put a lot of time and effort with what we built to support our UX for our use case. That said, if you wanted to have a more generalizable thing, I think it'd be really smart to start with very basic, 3 of 5 that maybe becomes a 2 of 5, right? Or a 2 of 3 that becomes a 1 of 3 maybe, right?
Well, there's one more big snag.
What's that?
Which is the UTXO rotation, right? Because the issue that I find is that this is the issue with Liana, right? It's what you guys need to do is split the wallet into using the same keys, so you don't need more keys, more signers, right? But using the same signers, you have to split the UTXOs into more manageable sizes so that you don't have to rotate the whole wallet when you do something. So, for example, essentially, it's you have more change in your wallet, right? And then when you spend those, you don't have to rotate the rest, because rotation ruins everything, including privacy.
You have to you have to basically kind of curate it. One example would be if you're on this time lock thing and you have to spend, maybe you use your oldest UTXOs first, because then if I just made a deposit yesterday, I don't need to use that UTXO to spend because the time lock just started, right? I agree with you. There's a lot to be kind of considered around the privacy and UTXO and time management. I do very much think it's early days because it's the Liana guys, the in production that are kind of leveraging this right now. And there's us that I'm using it personally in production, right? It's not a consumer facing product yet. But I'm optimistic that, in the coming years, this stuff gets really kind of ironed out and we're just kind of starting, the conversation, getting it out there. I think also with Bitcoin Dev Kit, more people are going to be empowered to start building this stuff for themselves. I know a lot of companies in the Bitcoin space and also larger crypto space have approached me. They started thinking about kind of how to build this stuff. I think it just takes time. And
until we have a 10x improvement on the security and UX, it's going to be harder for corporate looking for insurance to be interested in changing from their multi-sig setups to something like this, right?
Yeah.
But we're not far. I mean, it really is just a matter of like the right person coming up with the right UX idea.
Mhm.
And I think we're going to have a lot of people go into it. It just needs a little bit of more like out of box kind of thinking on how to approach this, because people are still thinking in terms of like a single wallet. And to put the stuff in there, and then you like, because that's how it's always been with P2SH, right? Like, I think we need more thinking of like, more granular, and like you still show maybe as a single wallet, but like it's actually multiple wallets inside, and stuff like that is just nobody's really like playing at that level yet. But I think it's coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Guys, we've been here for 2 hours now. How about I read some boosts, because the folks are supporting here. So Ape Me Frontier, perfect summary of the show and my reason for listening to it at the end. Vake, thumbs up. User 545499358, great show. Tech BTC, great conversation, thank you. Little, thanks, guys. I have no business listening to this show as I can't understand half of it, but a very enjoyable listen while I drive all day my truck. BTC on board, boost before listening. Just appreciate great technical info. Hard to find places to learn this stuff directly from experts. Thank you, guys. I mean, like, I'm finding incredibly fun, especially once Fountain went to Noster. Like the interactions with the users, like it really, like I really long for the day that the show would be sort of like live and have like an audience asking us questions and sort of hackling a little bit. I like that, but at the same time, it's very hard to make a show that's 2 hours long that is not edited, because like they often shave off like my uns and ahs and then save like 20 minutes of the show, and I think people appreciate that. So, anyways, we'll figure something out. I the boost in the comments, especially through Noster boosting, is really cool. Rob,
just if you were looking to wrap up the show, I just want to give a quick shout out to River. They did their proof of reserves. It was really cool. They used the BitMEX model that they wrote a whole open code base in Elixir that you can go look at, and it does proof of liabilities using Merkle trees. And it was a really cool experience because I had some Bitcoin on River to be able to actually do that whole operation, run the code myself. It was, it's a step mark improvement compared to not having anything. And they just part of it, they kind of say this UTXO, I think it had $850 million is like the River UTXO. So they kind of like very publicly declared like this is our asset side of the chain.
It goes right. Remember, I was mentioning that thing about like the vendor taking the clothes off. Like it's not immediately naked because like whatever, but like there's some ops that could be problematic. But it's just this idea, right? Like it's impossible to make anything perfect. It's impossible to be fully trustless. There's no such thing, right? Like it's a trust minimizing sort of process, and like the more we offer to the users in terms of like just giving them more agency and visibility over the things that we make, the more it keeps us honest, right? Like, and it protects us too. It's a process and it'll never be perfect. But I think there's nothing like this industry with that. Like, I mean, there's no other industry really that does stuff like this.
It's almost like deterministic builds on a corporate level, right? On the corporate balance sheet, you're like, I'm doing as much as I can. It's not exactly one-to-one, but that's the idea, right? Is you're just trying to do more.
I mean, listen, could they have another corp where they have a bunch of liabilities, like in a corporate structure? Absolutely, right? But no, it's like one more step for them to sort of try to cheat people, right? Like it costs money and time.
It's also a huge shout out just to Alex and the team at River have been slowly building for 5 years. It's because they own all of their own infrastructure. They can do this, right? Like they're the ones managing all of this.
I mean, if you care enough about your shit, you have to build it, right? Like it's like we have our own store. If you care enough, like I mean, you end up making custom software. Everybody ends up building their own accounting software. There is no way out of this. Craig, you were shaking your head there.
If we're busy wrapping up, my thought is just to thank everyone for listening and using the things that we talk about. I think we often take for granted our ability to work in the space, and we wouldn't have a space to work in if there weren't any users and people using the stuff and taking interest. And it's just great that we get to sit and chat about it, and grateful to all the users out there who take part and make it what it is.
there is no better industry for like the level of care the users have in this space, and like the people read the code. They really read the code, and they point out to you, like, what did you do here? Why did you do this way? Like it's amazing. It really is. It's the only way you can have this level of security, right? Is if the users care about this level of security. Ben.
Yeah, ditto what Craig said. It's good to like have all this stuff and like we can actually go this deep because a lot of the space, if you want to talk about databases, no one cares about this stuff this deep. But for Bitcoin, when it's your entire net worth, that's all we spend our time thinking about is all this stuff. So it's fun to do all this stuff, and I'm glad to be here.
Very cool, guys. Listen, I didn't even call final thoughts, but we went there. So thank you so much for giving 2 hours of your time. I'm extremely grateful for it. Grateful for your work. And, people keep on sending us questions, keep on sending us notes. We really enjoy it. And get the newsletter. Go read the newsletter. There's like another 70% I didn't read. It's there is only so much, guys. And do let us know if there's new projects or things that we should bring up, and guests you want to see, and it's fun. We do this for fun. This is a for fun show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. For more resources, check the show notes. We put a lot of effort into them. And remember, we don't have a crystal ball, so let us know about your project. Visit bitcoin.review to find out how to get in touch.